Again, for those of you who just joined, if you could please put your phones on mute, it would be helpful. We've got quite a few people on the call. We're going to try and keep the presentation under 30 minutes. So the actual presentation, I think I've got about 20-25 minutes, and then a few minutes for questions if you'd like. If we're running long, you can always email any questions to me, and I'll be happy to respond to you that way. Also, I heard from one or two people they're having trouble logging in. So I've got two solutions for that. One is I am planning to record this, so I can always send you a link that would allow you to view the recording. And then secondly, I can certainly just email the presentation to you, so you can always see the presentation at your leisure. So welcome today to the Hiroshi Focused Products presentation, planning to be a monthly event to discuss new developments and sometimes older products that we think could use some special attention. I've met many of you. For those of you who I've not met, my name is Bill Kysiak. I am a product manager in the Chicago office. And up on the screen now is my email address. So it's my first initial B like Bill, and then my last name, Kysiak, @hiroshi.com. So with that, let's get started. So today I want to talk about a couple of series of connectors that are very similar and closely related. They're the DF62, DF62W, and DF63W. Just as an overview, the DF62 is a wire-to-wire signal connector. Depending on the size of wire used, it can be anywhere from 1 to 3 amps. There was an NPI released on this in May of 2014, so it's a released product. Closely related are the DF62C, which we'll talk about in a minute. It has a protected lock release on it. That's the difference from the standard DF62. And then there's the DF62P, which is a panel mount version of the DF62. The DF62W is closely related, the same basic concepts, although it's a waterproof design of the DF62. And an MPI was released on that in May of 2014. And then a closely related product is the DF63W, which is a wire-to-wire waterproof, but in this case it's a power connector between 11 and 14 amps, depending on the wire gauge used. So thinking of it in a big picture, DF62 is the signal version, DF63 is the power version. DF63W is a released product, but there's not been an NPI on it yet. But there is one planned for June of 2015. So it's kind of you're getting a little advanced view of what's coming out in a couple of months. Oh, sorry. So our first page, we're going to look at the DF62. It's a slim inline connector. It's a slim design with a smooth contoured exterior on it that allows for connection inside of small spaces. So if you can think of threading the cable and connector through an internal tube, for example, something like a robotic arm, or inside the tubing inside of a bicycle is another application we've seen. It's really ideal for that. It has a secure positive lock with a tactile feel and click to it, also with a visual confirmation that it's been locked. It has a protected crimp contact. We can talk about that protection on that contact in just a minute. It has a contact lance that is the portion that secures it into the housing for a very secure connection. And there's a wide variety of pin counts available from 2 to 7, 13, and 24 positions. There'll be a graphic later in the presentation which shows that to you. And these are UL certified products. So the next page, here's an example where you can see the connector and cable actually being threaded to through a tube. It has a multi-row pin layout, so it's 2 millimeters in the vertical position, 2.2 millimeters in the horizontal. smooth contour exterior, no exposed metal. So if you're putting it through a metal tube, there's no chance for electrical issues. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a graphic showing how the DF62W does fit inside of a 14-millimeter ID, or inside diameter, where some of our other suppliers offer competitive products that are too large to meet that requirement. So the next page you can see, here's an example of the 7-position plug and socket. Again, you can see it's a 2-millimeter by 2.2 millimeter pitch a pin layout, a staggered layout with a smooth exterior on it. Applicable cables are 22 and 30 gauge wire to mate to this. Next page again shows, I'm sorry, I backed up the wrong way. Here we go. The lock is very secure. Once locked, as I had mentioned, it has a clear tactile feel to it and a click that's an audible click that tells you that it's been locked. There's also a visual confirmation that it's been locked. And that locking strength will withstand a 50 Newton pull. So it's a very nice locking system. If you have some samples of it that you received on the NPI, you can play with them, and I'm sure you'll see that. I'm going to spend a couple minutes, a couple slides here on the contact itself. Now, this is kind of fine detail, and I had debated whether or not it was appropriate for this meeting, but came to the conclusion that these are some of the features that make Hiroshi a superior product. This is what sets us apart from some of our competition, are some of these fine details. So in this, you can see in the bottom illustration, it's a 2-point of contact. Basically, you've got a opposing horizontal contact system that mate with the plug portion in 2 positions. In the upper graphic, you can see that there's a box shape on the head of the contact, which works as a mating guide to help align that male contact and prevents stubbing when you're mating the connector. Very strong against vibration and in rough environments. The next slide is showing you the reinforced lance. The lance being the portion that locks the contact into the housing. So there's a couple of points where the box is completely formed and actually forms into the vertical portion, which prevents that lance from opening up when you're pulling on the cable itself. So the pull strength on the lance is approximately 25 newtons per pin. You can see we've got that locking lance feature on both the plug contact and the socket contact. Next, there's a lance guard, which is a feature designed into the side of the contact, which as you're doing terminations and putting these cables, pre-terminating them before you insert them, they're kind of sitting all together, and it really prevents snarling of that cable while the cable is sitting there before inserted into the connector. Again, that's just one of these fine features that you'll find in a Hiroshi product that you may not find in others. And then let's talk a little bit about the crimp contact. In this case, we've got a common design for the crimp contact. The major advantage is it's a lower investment in termination tooling because you only need one termination tool for both the plug and the receptacle contact. There's a note you can see there that parts are parts change in existing applicators with the Hiroshi DF11, DF59, and DF62. So again, lower termination costs, or I'm sorry, lower termination tooling costs. And the next slide shows the variety of sizes available. So you can see it comes in a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, and 24 positions as standard products. We're certainly able to do other custom sizes based on a business case, but these are the sizes that are available as standard products. Let me talk just for a minute now about DF62C, C like Charlie. If you look at the graphic in the lower right-hand corner, you can see there's something that says side guards on it. Those are protecting the lock release that is available on the connector. Also, the lock release handle is tapered. So what that does for you is if you were to insert the connector and cable into a piece of tubing and then you need to draw it back out, there's always a chance that that lock release could inadvertently open and disconnect. Those side guards prevent that disconnection from happening. So that is different than the DF62. The DF62C has this guard protection. It makes the connector slightly larger, but in the appropriate application, it's something that's necessary. And then there's a DF62P, P for the panel mount version. The panel mount snaps into the front panel cutout, and then mates with a standard DF62 or DF62C connector. Let's switch gears a little bit to the DF62W, W being water resistant. This connector is very similar in design to the DF62. It's a simplified water resistant features, which we'll see in just a minute. By inserting the crimp contacts, that completes the waterproof function or the ability of the connector. And pin counts available in this DF62W are in 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9 positions. Again, it has UL approval pending on it. The next slide here shows the actual sealing features. So on the socket, there's a cable seal in the back end. On the plug, there's a housing seal on the back end and a cable seal on the front end. So that's the functionality that's providing the sealing. So there's sealing from the cable side into the socket or plug, and then there's a housing seal once the product is mated between the two parts. For odd sizes, so for example, if you have a 9-position connector and you only need 8 positions to be terminated, there is a void pin that can be inserted into that contact cavity, which would prevent water intrusion into that level. And these are IP67 water-resistant connectors in the mated condition, that is. Here's a slide that shows actual, once the contacts are inserted, that's what makes the sealing feature in the back of the connector and the plug. For a size comparison, the DF62W is slightly larger than the DF62 standard. Here's a little size comparison. We're looking at a 7 versus a 9 position, but you can see the differences. The standard DF62 is a 2mm pitch by 2.2 millimeter. The DF62W, the waterproof version, is 2.2 millimeter by 2.2 millimeter pitch in the X and Y axis. And the cables are 22 to 26 diameters, or I'm sorry, gauges, American wire gauge. Some applications, as we talked about a little bit, were in a robotic arm we've seen applications, in LED lighting inside of a conduit, some home appliance applications. So there's a variety of places where the connector can be used. It doesn't have to be used inside of a tubing, as we discussed. That's just one of the advantages of it. And here's a specification sheet. Mainly what I want to point out is the current rating, which is 3 amps for a 22 gauge wire, 2 amps for a 24 gauge wire, and 1 amp for a 26 to 30 gauge wire. I'd like to move on now to the DF63W. So if you remember the features of a DF62W, DF63W is very similar. The main difference is that it's capable of, it's really a power connector capable of 14 amps versus the 62W, which was a signal connector which was capable of 1 to 3 amps. Again, slim design. It has the same smooth exterior shell as the DF62 and DF62W. IP67 water resistant, just like the DF62W. Again, inserting the power contacts completes that waterproof assembly. Has a secure positive lock, just like the DF62, and UL certification is pending on this as well. It's really available in 2 sizes, in a 2-position and a 4-position. Here you can see the 2-position, which is a inline 2 contacts at a 3.96 millimeter pitch. Here's the 4-position, which is at a 3.96 millimeter by 4.4 millimeter pitch. So it's a 2x2 application. Another nice feature of the DF63W is it's available in two versions with different keying. It has different keying, so you can use 2 connectors on the same assembly, but you can be assured that you will not mismate them. And for the keying features, they're also colored. So one keying version is in white, the other keyed version is in black. So it's you have a visual indicator of which one plugs into which side, and there's also a hard key which prevents mismating. Just a slide to show the size difference between the DF62W and the DF63W. On the left, you've got a DF62W in 9-position. On the right, you've got a 4-position DF63W, which is larger for fewer contacts. Excuse me. In the center at the bottom, there's kind of a crude picture I took myself with my iPhone, but I just wanted to give you a demonstration of the size comparison between the DF62W, which in this case is on the right with the orange cables, and the DF63W, which is on the left with the white cable coming out of it. Not a great picture, but a nice illustration of the size comparison. Again, it has a nice locking feature, very similar to the DF62W, with the side guards to prevent mismating or the connector being hooked on the inside of a tube. A clear tactile feel and click to it, and a visual confirmation of that locking. Again, very similar applications. So we're talking about industrial controllers in a robotic arm. There's a picture on the bottom left there of a bicycle. Actually, let me move on to the next slide. It's kind of hard to see in this slide, but there's a red line running through the frame. It's an actual application of a electronic derailleur. So that derailleur runs up to the handlebars. And it's done internally with the DF62W style connector. Again, in specifications, I want to highlight here are the current rating, which is 14 amps for a 16-gauge wire and 11 amps for an 18-gauge wire. One last slide I want to show you is just to avoid any confusion. Hirose does have another connector called a DF63. If you remember, we've just been talking about a DF63W. Well, the DF63 does not look like a DF63W. It's more rectangular in shape, it has hard edges, comes in a single row, and importantly, it's a wire-to-board, not a wire-to-wire connector. And it is not intermatable with a DF63W. One of those little anomalies with the Hirose numbering system, when I first started putting this presentation together, I was a little confused about what was going on. I want to make sure that it's crystal clear to you that the DF63 and DF63W are different configurations. They look different. So that's all I have for you this morning. I'd be happy to entertain a question or two. If not, you can feel free to send your questions to me by email. You had my email from the beginning of the presentation. As I said, I am recording this, so it will be available for re-review if you have an associate that missed it, would like to